Good morning, and thank you for coming. This presentation will be recorded by Northborough Cable Access. First, I want to say thank you to Owen Jones and Autumn Stewart for the lighting and soundboard for today's presentation. After Grace Jo speaks, there will be time for question and answer. There is an anonymous survey after the presentation which will help the Dissonant Project and Algonquin know how to better bring speakers like Grace Jo to our community. Grace Jo is one of the 370 refugees from North Korea who have settled in the U.S. Currently, Grace lives in Atlanta, Georgia. In 2013, Grace became a U.S. citizen. Alongside her family, she has protected the forced return of North Korea, escapes hiding out in China. Grace served as a vice president for an organization, NK in USA, which helps North Korean defects in resource resettlement and emergency assistance. Please put your hands together for Grace Jo.
Good morning. Wow, thank you so much for a warm welcome, and it's great pleasure for me to stand here and share my story with you all. Again, my name is Grace Jo, and I was born in North Korea. And today I would like to share a little bit of my story from my childhood and then the trip to China, escaping roots, and then I will explain a little bit about my life in the USA as well. And currently I'm attending college at Atlanta. It's called the Savannah College of Art and Design, and I'm majoring in interior design, which is very different than what I'm doing now. But I love it. It took a little time for me to figure out my career path, but after 6 years of studying in the US and trying to find a way for me to think about what we'll be able to do and what I want to do. So after a long time later, I finally decided to take interior design program, and I'm excited and I'm very loving in that major right now. So I'm hoping to become great interior designer later and go back to my country and rebuild the villages and the cities back again. If I go back to my childhood, I would like to share a few memories that I have. When I was 6 years old, and I had big sisters. I had two sisters and two younger brothers. I had a grandmother and father and mother. We had a happy family, and we were living in the mountain because my father, he was assigned to the mountain area when the Great Famine hits. That was in 1996 to 1997. And North Korea, my country, was facing the Great Famine, which is like massive hunger, disease, and we didn't have any food because of a politics state and country's mismanagement, I will say. So at the time, about 300 million people died by starvation, hunger, frostbite, and died by the punishment and all that. And my family was not an exception. At the time, my first memory was my older sister and my second sister. We all went to the mountain picking up the wild berries, and we were collecting that with our little hands, come back to home and cutting in pieces and sharing with other siblings. That was my first memory. The second memory I have is when my father, he left home for work, and he couldn't come back home. I wasn't able to see him every day because he come back home very late, and he always go to work very early. So I think I only saw him like once a week or something. So about his memory, I don't have much, but I have a few. And one day, I remember we were so hungry at the time, and we were drinking cold water only for about 10 days. And those cold water we were collecting with a little bucket from the nearby river, which was right next to our house, and we were collecting it and bringing it to our house and put in the big jar, and we were drinking that water for 10 days. If I say we didn't have a food, then you probably, or some people actually, in the beginning of my presentations in other places, one of the students asked me, if you didn't have rice to eat, why don't you eat the ramen noodles? So when I heard of that question, it was a little shocking for me, because in North Korea, when we say we don't have any food to eat, which means we really, really don't have anything to eat. For example, we don't have eggs, we don't have potatoes, we don't have nothing to eat. And North Korea at the time, when we trying to be creative on making food on our own, because our government stopped providing food and ration to the people. But before then, when my mom's time, the country was giving enough food and enough rations, so we were not too hungry. But during my sister's time, it slowly cut it down. In 1994, the Kim Il-sung died and Kim Jong-un became the great leader. And then the rations from the government completely shut down. So all those government employees, military base, they were able to get some rations, but not full rations. And like our family, like middle class family, we were not able to get the supplies from the government, which means we have to find our own way to survive in the country. But because of the law and regulation, because of travel ban, all the things that apply to our country, which is not allowed to do our own business in the beginning. We were not allowed to travel to different city to bring the goods to bring it to the city and sell it without any permission. So it was very hard for my parents to figure out how to help dying family. So in the beginning, we struggled a lot, and we were starving, and we were drinking cold water for 10 days only without any food. And during winter time, which is this season, is most difficult season for us, because we couldn't get any wild fruits from the mountain. We couldn't collect any wild vegetables from the ground. So it was very tough for us to go through the winter. And it's cold, we don't have extra shoes, we don't have clothes. So it's most difficult season in the fall season. However, the summer season is much better, because we can eat the grass, wild vegetables, fruits, and some tree barks we can eat. But for the long run, for 2 years, 3 years, when we eat those tree barks and grasses, we don't have any nutrition in our body. So that's why we call it malnutrition. And when malnutrition comes to our body, what happens was our belly will get bigger, and our arms and legs got skinny, so it's like a skull covered with a little skin. And then your hair will turn to the yellow, and it will stick out. It doesn't listen calming. Right now, when you look at my hair, it's yellow, but I dyed the color. But at the time, the natural color turned yellow, and then it sticks out, and it doesn't listen. So it was very awkward at the time, and I wasn't able to hold the heavy things because my bones don't have any strength. And I wasn't able to actively walk during the daytime. So one day, it was early spring, and my mom, she was cleaning the front yard in our house area, because we were planning to plant some corns and some vegetable for the summer. And then that noon, she ran to the house and yelled and cried to my mom, and she said she found something strange under the stone, and she touched it a little bit. It was soft, and it was so scary. So my grandmother heard, and then she ran outside. They checked it together, and then they found out it was newborn mice. Right under the stone area. It was 6 newborn mice, and they found it, and my grandmother, she was so excited about it, because she was saying that newborn mice is one of the best nutrition medicine, because it's meat. So they were my mom and my grandmother, they were discussing like how to cook that. And then I was hearing all that about 1 hour argument. They said, oh, should I tie it with the rope and then dry it and then cook it later? Should I fry it or should I steam it? They were talking so many different options, but finally, at the end of the discussion, they ended up boiling it in the stone pot and then make a soup and give it to one of her child. And I was the luckiest one, and I got picked, and I was able to drink that miso soup. The taste, it tastes like a meat soup, and they said because it's medicine, we shouldn't put any salt in it, so there's no salt flavor, only meat soup flavor. And that was the one of the day that I tested like a half corn rice mixed rice, like actual rice I could taste that day. I was so happy, excited, and I finished all of them. And after about 2 weeks later, I kind of gained energy back, and my hair tried to turn to the black, and it was a little bit turning like a coming down. So my grandmother told me that, oh, see, this is the great medicine. Well, I don't recommend you guys try it, but that was one of the memory I have when I was little, tried my soup. Another memory I have was when my father taken away from us. About 2 years, we were constantly starving and hungry. So my father, he decided to go to China illegally because at the time, about like when I was 1 or 2 years old, he went to China with the legal pass, and he visited his distant relatives in China. So he got help from that time. So he knew there's distant relatives lives in China. And during the Great Famine, he couldn't get the legal passport because in North Korea, they say education is free, healthcare is free, everything is free. But in reality, it wasn't free because when you're trying to get the passport from the officials, those officials has to sign your paper, and they will not sign your paper without getting any goods from you. So we have to pay. At the time, they were asking 80 kilograms of red bean, not the red bean, the yellow beans. And then the value of that is like comparing the US dollar, maybe we can say 2,500 US dollars, we will say. But 1 kilogram rice was like $10. So comparing that 2,500 value yellow bean was very, very expensive for us, and we couldn't afford it. So my father decided to not get the legal passport and go to the China illegally with the smuggling in. So he went to China for 3 times, and of course the journey to China is like walking by foot, hiding in the bush, and they are not telling anybody, so they have to walk during nighttime and hide during daytime. And when they get to the border between China and North Korea, there's one shallow river between those 2 countries. We call it Tumen River. There's 2 rivers between North Korea and China border, but Tumen River is a little shallow, so many people, they cross that river. And my father, he swam across that Tumen River, found the relatives, got some help, brought bags of rice. And when he walks into the house, we couldn't see him. We only see like a big bag. The bags were way bigger than his own body. But it was tired, exhausted, but he has to carry from China to North Korea to our house. And of course, they couldn't come home during daytime, and they always walk into the house like midnight, pitch dark midnight. And one solution our family made was when they bring some rice and goods from China to our house, no matter what, they want to cook right away and feed us first because we don't know what's going to happen the next morning. So the feast, like a happy moment, is like that night. And then about 2 times was successful, but the 3rd time when he returned back, the next morning, one of the person in the village, they found out and they reported my father to the government. So my father, when he went to a street market to exchange some North Korean goods with Chinese goods, he got caught and he sent it to the local detention center. And my mother got caught and she was also in the detention center. And those officers, they come to our house and they were searching whole house, make house all the mess. And then they were finding all the Chinese materials, rice, bags, all the sauce they brought from China. Whatever it looks like Chinese items, they were collecting everything and taking away from us. My grandmother was begging them. All my brothers and I were crying there and begging them, but they don't care. They just searched everything and they left the house. And about 3 months later, we were struggling in the house, and we didn't have father, we didn't have a mother, and I was about 6 years old. My one of oldest sister was 10 years old, and my oldest sister was 17 years old at the time, and I had one younger brother. He was 4.5 years old. And at the time, my youngest brother didn't born yet. And about 3 months, when we starving in the house, we have to be creative every day. Like every morning when we wake up, like what we normally do. Can you tell me like what you normally do for the first time in the morning when you wake up? Yeah, tell me. What's your name? Hi, Jordy. Hi. You brush your teeth, right? And take a shower. You get dressed and eat some breakfast and come to school, right? That's normal life. And about decades ago, I also was dreaming to live normal life as well. And that simple normal life was impossible for me in North Korea because we did not have toothpaste. So we were brushing our teeth with the finger. And once a while, if we are lucky enough, we will have some salt, and then we will using the salt brush teeth. And of course, shower, we only be able to take a shower once a month. You will probably think, oh, it's gross. But we don't have water to supply us every day to take a shower. We don't have enough water to drink, and we don't have enough water to take a shower. And of course, we don't have showering system in the house, so we have to boil the water in the pot, put it in the little bucket, and then we were standing there and washing ourselves. Or go to the river with the cold water, we take a shower in the river right away. Anyway, after my father taken away, it took 3 months for my mom to return. And one day, we were sitting in the house, and we're always watching at the back. There's one little road connected with the little tree branches there. We're always watching that corner and see when my parents are gonna walk into that area. So one day we were watching it, and we saw my mother was walking by so slowly, very, very slowly, and she barely able to walk at the time. So we all ran to her and grabbed her, and we were crying, "Mom, why you take so long to come back to us," and blah, blah. And then my mom, she took it to the detention center, and she stayed in detention center for 3 months. But those 3 months, she was, of course, tortured. She has to go through all those intimidating time period for her. And she was forced to sit all day long without any moving. So both legs were swollen, and she barely walked at the time. So her physical condition was really bad. And then it was lucky for her because she got released from the detention center because she was pregnant for 3 months. It was our youngest brother at the time, but my father was not lucky enough, so he never returned. And a few months later, my youngest brother finally born in a town. It was dark, and my mom started to deliver the baby. And my grandmother, she quickly burned the woods in the kitchen, make a little light, and boil the water, and brought the scissor in the kitchen and assisted the birth in the house. And we all were crying in the house at the corner because it's dark, and my mom was yelling, of course, and then it was very scary moment for us. After our baby brother was born, what should we do? My mom didn't have any food to eat and nothing to eat. We were collecting those leftovers from the government-operated farms, but so many people already searched so many times, so we were not able to find any small potatoes or corns or beans from the farm. And we also went to the millwork. We were trying to collecting the leftover powder in the millwork, trying to collect it and bring it home and trying to make a porridge. But those millwork already searched many times by other people, so only those hard, big corn skins were left over. So we were putting those skins back into the millwork. We were smashing it again, make it a little bit more softer, and then bring it home and try to make a porridge. We were mixing with the white vegetable, trying to make a soup, and then drink it. And the day my younger brother was born, we were not able to collect those powder anymore as well because it's all gone. And my oldest sister, when she walked into the house from a trip, she was searching for food and she wasn't lucky enough, so she didn't get any food and returned home. And then she heard the baby was crying, my mom was laying down, my grandmother was 70 years old, and she was barely walking at the time. And my sister was 10 years old, and she was very skinny, but in this picture, she's pretty chubby. Now she's chubby too. But at the time, she was really, really skinny, only bone with the skin. And I was barely walk at the time, 6 years old. So what my oldest sister decided was she wanna go back to the trip and find the food and then come back home. That was her original plan. And she promised us that the latest is tonight or tomorrow night, I will be returned. I promise I will be returned. But that promise never met. It's been 23 or 24 years now, and we don't know what happened to her, and we don't even know whether she's alive or died. Since then, she's missing. She was 17 years old, and we were suspecting that she probably sold into human trafficking to China. After my oldest sister missing, my mother, she waited about a week at home. We were drinking cold water, of course, and then trying to find 1 or 2 beans from here and there, trying to eat a little bit. And at the time, we also were able to catch 1 mice who got caught between the little drawer and the clock. And then we caught it, and then we grilled it and ate the mice. The mice has a lot of oil because they were collecting all those corns and beans from the village, so they are very chubby and very delicious. But if you ask me to eat it now, I don't think I can eat it, but at the time it was delicious. After about a week later, my mom, she couldn't give up on my oldest sister, so she decided to search on her. So she left the home, and the newborn baby, of course, left at home for my grandmother to take care. And my mom's searching took about 2 months. And those 2 months, the second sister, she was 10 years old. She was carrying the baby, go to the village, and asking those moms who already have a baby, and asking them and beg them to give us some milk for the baby. 1 or 2 times they gave milk, but they were hungry and they were starving as well, and moms, they don't have enough milk for their child. So 3rd or 4th time, when we keep going there, they refused to give. And their dads were actually chasing my sister away from their house. So one day, she returned home with the crying. And again, we had to go to the millwork, collect those soft powder, and make a porridge and feed it to the baby. And my youngest brother, the baby, was trying so hard to survive for 2 months. But unfortunately, about 3 days before my mom's return, he couldn't wake up the next morning. He died after starvation. And my grandmother, she buried him next to our house. And after my mom came back, about 2 months later, she brought a lot of milk powder from China, a lot of white rice, and some bean paste from China, trying to bring something to the family since she couldn't find my oldest sister. But the moment when she walked in, she didn't see the baby in the ground, so she just collapsed and she started to cry, and she was complaining, "What in the world? I couldn't even save my youngest son, and my oldest daughter is also missing and I couldn't find." And she was crying and complaining, and someone overheard over the window, and then they went to the village officers and they told them again. She returned. And then those 6 officials, they came to our house. They were grabbing my mom's hair, beating her, and taking her all the items that she brought from China. So that day, it was a chaotic moment and chaotic memory I have, and we all were crying and begging them. But that night, it was more scarier moment for me. I never be able to forget. My mom, she burst into the house, and it was very late night, and we barely have the fire, so normally we burn the wood skin as a torch, and that's the only light source for us, because in North Korea, they only give electricity about 2 hours a day. And then we were living in the countryside, and many people, they were cutting the wire. It was a silver wire in North Korea, so they were cutting the wire and selling and exchanging, making food. And of course, when they got caught, they will get punished, but they have to survive either. So they always cut it so we don't have lights all the time. So when we burned the torch, we found out that my mom, she was bleeding from her skull, and all her face was covered by the blood, and all her jacket was covered by the blood, and she was ran to the house, and she said, "Well, we have to run." So she took me and my older sister and one of my younger brother, and then we ran to the mountain, and we were hiding for 2 days. What happened was, after she got caught by the officers, and they were storing her in the closet room or something. It was kind of detention center there. And one of the officer, he got drunk, and when he did the interview on my mom, he just grabbed some wood block and hit my mom's head. And then her bone skull was broken and bleeding so hard. And then she was scared, so she ran away, and we were hiding in the mountain. But about 2 days later, we found out it was morning, a lot of mist happening there, so moisturized the environment under the bush we were hiding. But my mom slowly lost her conscience. And my sister, she convinced us that Mom is losing conscience. We cannot just stay in the mountain, otherwise Mom probably will die. Let's go back home. Grandma might have some solution for us. So we took my mom and we came back home. And after that, she couldn't really walk herself. She just completely lost her conscience. So about several months, she was sick severely. And those officers came back to our house, and then they checked on my mom. And of course, my mom, she lost her consciousness. She couldn't really reply to their words, so they just left and said, when she get better, let her come to our office. But those several months happened. So March, my youngest brother, he died. And then about 3 months later, in June, my mom collapsed. My grandmother was old, 10 years old. My sister, she was collecting wild vegetables, tried so hard to help the family to survive, but she had a limit. And my grandmother, she was hoping to make some wild vegetable soup for us. So that morning, she was chopping the wood, but she doesn't have energy. So she had one little scar on her on hand. And then in the afternoon, she went to the wild and collected some wild vegetable. And then in June or May, of course, all the plants are very toxic. I don't know if you know that, but all those wild vegetables are kind of have a lot of toxic elements there. So that toxic material went into my grandmother's hand, and about 3 days later, she started to develop like a blister, big brown blister. And a day passed by day, the blister got bigger and bigger. And she didn't have food to eat. We didn't have any medicine. We didn't even have salt to sanitize the scar. We just watching my grandmother's arm slowly got rotten. And after that blister reached her arm, and that took about 2 weeks. And 2 weeks later, my grandmother started to talk up something that we couldn't understand. And she was mumbling, and she was calling my sister's name, and she was keep saying, control that fire, control that fire. The rice is burning, and the potato is burning. But at that time, we didn't have any adults who can work in the house, so we didn't have fire in the house. House was cold. And then it was the house made by the wood. So it's like I don't know if you guys went to the Montana, but there's like a log cabin on top of the mountain. It looks like that. So our house looks like that. And then our house can contain about 50 adults on the ground for the workers. Of course, we don't have individual bed. We're all sleeping on the same ground. So that's the size of a house, and then we don't have any fire to warm up. And then when we trying to burn the torch, we didn't have enough tree skin. So when we go up to the rooftop, and we were taking out the wood skin that covered the rooftop. So when we looking outwards to the main door, we see those lights, but I was able to see the outside light coming through the house because we had a hole here and there in the house. So during winter time, all those cold wind blows in, then our house is freezing cold. So at that time, really cold, really dark, but my grandmother was keep saying, the rice is burning, potato is burning. The next day, my grandmother's last wish was to eat one baked potato, but we wasn't able to fulfill that goal, her wish. So my grandmother passed away, and several months, in the beginning of that year, in 1998, in January, we actually received a message from one of the officials came from the city prison, and he said, he delivered my father's party membership card, and then he announced that my father was transferring from detention center in the countryside to the city prison for the final trial. And then he was running from the train toward the China side, and then one of our officers found out and shot him to death. That was the news we got about our father's death. And my mom, she was pregnant at the time, and then she was shocked, and she was crying and sobbing, and the next morning she delivered a premature baby. After my father's death, my grandmother died, and my oldest sister missing. My mom was sick and laying down on the floor, and my youngest brother already died. And our house was cold and no adults who can help, and we didn't have shoes, we didn't have enough clothes, and we didn't have any food to eat at the time. So for 2 or 3 years, we were constantly hungry, and we didn't have any food, malnutrition, and all those things combined together. At that time, it was a really difficult time for us to bear. But after my father, grandmother all passed away, the government officials, they came to our house. It was about 6 people came to our house and announced that this year you have to vote for Kim Jong-il in the city, Busan, which is not in the countryside. But every year when we vote, when grandmother was alive, we were able to vote in that countryside. But after my parents committed a crime, according to North Korean government, they were not welcoming us anymore in that village. So they want to kick us out. And they were saying that I will give you 15 days notice, and after 15 days, if you guys are still living in this house, I will burn this house down. So that was the last word my mom heard from officials, and then that completely broke my mom's heart. And my father and my mother, they were so loyal to our government in the beginning, and they only knew the government, and they only knew how to work hard for the government. But later on, she decided that was not the country we can live anymore, because what a country, they're kicking us out in the village because we were trying to survive. And only crime was bring 1 bag of rice from China. That was my country, North Korea. And 1998, July, on my birthday, we crossed the 2 more rivers. Of course, we were walking unpaved road, rocky mountain. A lot of tree bushes were touching our face, and we had to find a way in the tree branch, bush, and mountains. And finally, when we get to the river, we had to manage to cross the river, but the river level was reached my mom's hip, my sister's chest, and I will be drowned if I didn't have my mom. And she was carrying me inside of her backpack, and I was holding her, and then I was looking down the water. The water wave was very scary. And we took about an hour to cross that Tumo River. And after we crossed the Tumo River, my mom took us to one of the older lady's house in China, which is right next to the border. And those older lady, at the time, it was like a beginning of the famine, and massive North Korean defectors, they were crossing to China side. And near the border, there's a Korean Chinese citizens living there. And at the time, they were pity on us, and they were able to help us. So they were cooking rice for us and cooking soup for us. So the older lady cooked like a whole pot of rice, gave us 1 cabbage kimchi, and the bean paste soup. And we all finished the whole pot of rice. 3 ladies, we finished everything. And I was like a big belly, and I was so satisfied. And the moment, at the same moment, I was looking out of the window, and I saw a big yellow dog. I think it was like a similar to golden retriever dog. And he was fed by like one of the big like a container mixed with the white rice and then the pork meat soup. And then that dog was smelling a little bit, and he didn't like it. So he was standing there, and he doesn't like to eat. And when I see that moment, I was so curious about this world. What is this world? Where is this place? We were fighting so hard, and my father died, and we were collecting and trying to look for food so hard, and my brother and my grandmother died without any 1 single potato to eat. But that dog doesn't like to eat that white rice and meat soup. And the owner is giving that good rice and soup and meat to the dog. And then that time, I realized, wow, this is a completely different world. And since then, we were trying to survive in China, and we were hiding in China for 10 years, and we were not able to live in one place for longer time. So every 6 months or 1 year, we have to move to different places because we didn't have any birth certificate to prove that we were Chinese citizens. So when we get to the moment that we have to prove that document, we have to run away. So that journey took about 10 years for us to survive in China. But Chinese government, they don't recognize North Koreans as North Korean the refugees. So they consider us as illegally crossed immigrant. So they always searching us, caught us, and then forcefully sent it back to North Korea. We call it repatriation. And myself, we got caught twice, and I was in prison in China. And sent back to North Korea twice. But my mom, she wasn't lucky enough. She sent back 4 times, and she finally succeeded to find freedom on her 5th trial.
And of course, each time when we sent back North Korea, it's hard to describe in words. Like all these fears come from the moment when we land our feet into North Korea land. The smell of atmosphere is also different. I don't know how to explain this, but like when we first moment see that officer walking towards us, our skin is like becoming chicken skin. And the moment when they talk to us, the first words is, you cannot look up on our face, and you always need to bow down like 45-degree angle, and then you have to consider you are not human being from this moment. And you have to 100% obey our words and our commands from now on. That's the first commands the officer was giving us. And then we have to agree to that, and then he will take us to the 보위부, which is like a CIA level in the US. We will go there, and then a lot of detention centers, like prisoner rooms there, and each room we had about 35 people or 40 people, and we were all sitting, like one knee touched the other person's knee. And the punishment there is sitting all day long until the officer gave us break. So only breakfast, lunch, and dinner time, and then in between we have about 10 minutes break. But other than that, we were sitting there without any moving. If officer found out that you were moving a little bit, and he was watching the security camera in his office, and he will come with like a little stick and then call that person up, let him stand up, and then trying to beat him. If he lost something or he wasn't happy during that night, he will drag him or her out, and he started to practice his kung fu on the hallway. So we, in the prison cell, we were hearing all those yelling and screaming every night. And I was lucky because I was under 18 at the time, and I was 12 years old, and I was able to stay in the hallway and didn't get punishment like adults. But the torture I received was just slapping on my face and asking whether it's true or no. The first question is, have you been to church, or have you been to met the pastors in China? But at the time, I was educated by my mom, like what kind of words I should say and what kind of words I should say no. So thankfully, I was able to release, and during those repatriation, I kind of experienced about my country's reality. I saw a lot of orphanage shelters, how those shelters treat the children, and how those children are starving. And I also met one of the kids. He was trying to escape from that orphanage shelter and found out by the officer. And one of the leader of the children group, he hit him and beat him so bad. So his left leg's tendon came out on his thigh. And he was barely walking to go to the kitchen and eat the food. So when we heard that news, it was so scary for me. And the other memory I have was, it was different orphanage shelter, but I met two little boys. Their body shape was like a 6 years old young boy body figure, and they were always sitting at the corner. One boy didn't have both feet, and another boy didn't have both leg until the knee. So one day I brought some food for him, and when I noticed no one in the room, I kind of called them, come to me, and they were come to me, and then I asked them, how old are you? And then I was shocked, because one boy was 17 years old, and another boy was 18 years old. They were escaped from that orphanage shelter, walking around in the street during the winter time. And winter was so cold, they got the frostbite, and they captured, and they came to the shelter again, and got beaten and all that. Several weeks later, they developed the infection on their both feet. So they had to cut their feet, both of them. And after he lost a lot of blood and a lot of nutrition, their body got shrink. North Korean children, after whoever born 1990s, they didn't have enough nutrition, so their body shape is already small. And when I went back to North Korea, I was considered as a giant. Guys, I only like 5 feet 3 inch, and they consider me as a giant. Can you believe it? I got beaten because I was tall, according to my age. Anyway, I saw some of those like inhumane treatments in North Korea, and I realized that is my country, and I feel so shame about that. And after I come to America, and after I come to China, well, of course, life in China, we always hide our identity because we don't want anyone else to know that we came from North Korea, so we always say, oh, we came from South Korea. We were just visiting. But after I come to America, in the beginning, I was so embarrassed, so I didn't tell anybody else that we came from North Korea. But now I'm telling you guys that I was born in North Korea, I came from North Korea, because the reality in communist country, the communism sounds so beautiful on the text, but in reality, when people trying to make that system work, it never worked out, because we are human being, and we have our way to pursue the good life in our way. And North Korea, they say everything free, but everything not free. As students, you have to pay for your own desk, your own textbook, your own uniform. And when the school window got broken, you have to find the money to buy the glass and send it to the teacher so then they can fix the window. So if your family cannot financially support you, you are not be able to go to school in North Korea. So education free, which is right, but in reality it's not free. Healthcare is free, but in the hospital we don't have any medicine to eat. I saw one guy, he got injured so badly, so he had to take an IV in the Boyub detention center. But how did they do is they were sanitizing that IV plastic line by boiling it and reusing it every time. So those life in North Korea, we call it communism, and that's why I'm raising voice and tell you guys that communism sounds beautiful, but in reality, it's painful. And that's my taste of communism, and I would like to promote that capitalism is the great system because we will get rewarded as much as we work hard. So I reached my goal and my dream as living as a normal human being right now because I wake up in the morning, I can brush teeth, and I can eat the quick breakfast, and I get ready and go to school. And that's my normal life now. And I can dream about my future life. I can dream about my future career. And this is the freedom and liberty can give to us. Communism cannot give that to us. They are taking away our dream, and they are taking away our life in my country, North Korea. So please protect the freedom in your country. And I would like to say you are the luckiest person in the world because you are chosen to be here and you are born in Liberty country. Thank you for listening.
Does anybody have any questions? Thank you, by the way. That was great.
Give me 1 second here. Give me 1 second. You gotta do it. All right, so how long? That's not the question, but just give me a second. Anyways, so I think. So your story's like pretty like fascinating. Like I think you know what this whole thing kind of sounds like it could. It sounds like one of those. It sounds like one of those like documentaries, sort of like, like one of those like Steven Spielberg movies. But anyways, the question is that anyway, just give 1 second. Give 1 second. So the question is that what part of America did you actually say you went to when you first went there?
Sorry, what part of America
Did you live in when you came here?
I liked or
No,
I-
when you moved to America, like where did you come to?
Oh, okay. Well, the first state when we landed was Chicago International Airport, and at that airport we were doing fingerprint and all the documenting, and then we will send it to our own state for residential resettlement. The first state we were trying to resettle was Seattle, Washington, and then we loved it because we finally found the freedom, but we couldn't bear the climate, the temperature, and then the rainy weather because it was so depressing. And my mom and my sister, they were sobbing every day because their body was sore. All these tortures from the officers, I think it had a side effect when the cold weather comes, so they were complaining every day. And later we decided to go to Alaska because my mom, she got a phone call from Alaska, one of the lady from church, and they said she can help my sister to go to high school. And at the time, my sister was 21 years old, and according to America education, 21 years old, you cannot go to regular high school. So my mom was considering about the education, so we just packed without any further research, and we just packed the next day, and we flew to the Alaska. And that was December, and we first time saw that 22 hours a day was dark at night, like night during winter time. And then we kind of also experienced the short summer there because we moved to DC area in July. And another surprising thing was during summertime, it was 22 hours daylight. So we were playing basketball with my mom at 12 a.m. midnight in front of church play yard, and one of the church member came out and was kind of saying that, I'm sorry, I know it's harder for you to adjust, but it's midnight here in Alaska. I know it's daylight still bright, so you probably don't feel tired, but we all have to sleep. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'm so sorry. So we were experiencing so many different climates there at the time. So first time I realized, wow, the world is really big. Because when I was little, I thought my house was pouring with big rain, then I thought whole world is gonna rain. But that was first moment that I realized world is big and every country has different climates. Oh, I think there has.
You've described that life in Korea was very rough. Was your society set up in such a way that you didn't know about life in other countries, such as the US, for example, and that everywhere around the world was just as difficult as Korea?
Thank you for that question. Yes, when I was living in Chicago, I also volunteered one of the church mission, and we were serving the homeless people population in Chicago area, and I learned a lot homeless population condition at there. But comparing to my country, I feel like American homeless people, they are so blessed because the government, they were able to give them food and they were able to provide some phone per monthly, and they can actually receive money, well, not much, but be able to survive in America. I think that's really great benefit as United States government. Because in North Korea, when you have disabled or when you are not physically able to fight for food, then you are locked inside of the building and you are not able to fight for your life and you will die in short time. And for regular physically able people, they have to searching food and beg food in the street, and they have to steal other people's food to survive. That's totally different, and I will say still in America is blessed.
You had said growing up you had like a really rough childhood, how you only had to drink water and certain types of things. I was just curious, like after class, what did you guys usually do for fun with like your classmates?
I couldn't hear clearly, sorry.
Oh. Did you go to school?
Oh, for education in
Yeah.
North Korea? No, I was 7 years old when I escaped North Korea, so I escaped right before I be able to attend the school. But at the time, even though I was able to go to school, my family could not support it because we were so poor at the time. From middle class, we were just dropped to way lower class at the time, so we were not able to afford a school trip, and financially, my parents could not support my sisters to go to school. So me personally didn't attend the school, but my sisters, they were attending schools, and they were practicing sports, music, and all those school activities.
Is it on? Oh, great. So you obviously speak English very fluently. Did you also have to learn Mandarin when you were hiding in China?
Thank you for that question. Yes. When I came to China at 7 years old, that was the first year I kind of read the alphabet in Pinyin, Chinese Mandarin. And it's survival language, like verbally and listening skills are increased after that. So I do speak Mandarin, Chinese, Korean, and a little bit of English, yes.
So you said that China would send you back to North Korea, so how did you escape China as well to come to the United States?
Thank you for that question. So in 2005, we got caught together in Qingdao, China. And that year, in 2004, we actually read that the George W. Bush president, he signed a North Korean Human Rights Act in the US. So that gave us chance to come to America as legal refugees. But we shouldn't stop the third country, which is South Korea. If we stopped at third country, then we will not get the benefit as a legal refugee and be able to resettle in the US. So my mom decided to come to America instead of go to South Korea. So we stayed in China. And at the same time, the Korean American missionary who helped our family were planning to rescue 10 other North Korean people in China to South Korea. And once we decided to stay in China, we tried to help him to rescue other people. So we opened our house and provided hospitality for them. And then we were helping him to purchase a train ticket and then help them to go to Inner Mongolia. And at the time, the escaping route was popular from China to Inner Mongolia and from Inner Mongolia to Outer Mongolia, and then they claim as North Korean defector, and the Mongolian government will send those North Koreans to South Korean embassy at the time because that was the only embassy in Outer Mongolia. But since 2005, North Korea found out so many people are escaping through the Mongolian route, so they kind of spoke with the Mongolian government and they built North Korean embassy in Outer Mongolia. So since then, North Koreans are not able to go that route, but only route available now is going to Laos and Vietnam and like a little bit farther route to find freedom.
So it's pretty evident that you had a rough childhood. So what gave you the inspiration to keep going and to escape and like still live like a good life?
Sorry, would you please repeat the question?
So, what gave you the inspiration after having such a rough childhood to like keep going forward?
The year I was graduating high school, my sister, she was running an organization called NCAN USA, and at the time she was suffering by herself, and I decided to help her. So that's the moment I kind of involved in human rights activities. And after I get involved, I was thinking about my purpose of living. And later I realized I think God sent me to America and gave us a second chance to live freely in the United States. I think there must be a purpose. And during the imprisonment, we also prayed to God that and we also promised that wherever He sent us to, we will go there and we will tell them the truth and God's miracle to the world. I think God heard that promise, and that's how He guided me through nowadays. I think sharing and raising boys in America is my mission as a survivor, so that's what I'm taking. And that kind of another occasion I remember was when I was in Chinese prison for 13 months. I met so many ladies. They were going through our prison cell, and one of the lady, they came to me, and then she told me that she was a youth pastor in Korean Chinese church for 7 years, and then now it's time for them to go back to North Korea, so they are going back, but they know they will not be able to survive again and come back again. But she has feeling that I will survive. So she said, if you go out from this difficult moment and if you got freedom, please tell the world that North Koreans are suffering and they are dying. And even though I die, I will not regret because people are remember us. So I think that words give me strong mind that I never forget. Of course, every time when I share my family story, it's kind of hard afterwards because all these memories coming back to me. But each time I am able to come back to the stage is because we want to let the world know that the communist country is felt and they are taking away humans' life instead of providing equal opportunities. So I think that gives me the encouragement to keep coming back to the stage.
I'd like to say thank you for sharing your story. I can't imagine how hard it is. It touched me a lot. My question is, what was the most exciting or surprising thing you saw when you got to America?
Thank you. Well, after about 2 years later of resettlement, we finally realized how freedom feel like. Because for the 2 years, we didn't know we were working so hard for 2 jobs, 3 jobs, and I was attending school. So I didn't have a moment to feel like what was the freedom feel like. But here is the story. After we moved to Maryland from Alaska, and one of the local church, they helped us to make a deposit and helped our family get the first car in our life. And my sister, she was the first person who can have the license. So from the dealer, we were so excited and happy, and we drove that little red Corolla from the dealer. And at the intersection, there's a red light, and we stopped there. And then when the green light turns, my sister, she was so excited, and she just pushed the gasoline, and then we just ran towards the right side. And then on the left side, there was an officer was waiting in line, and then he right away followed us at the back. And then he was, of course, the officers, they will turn on the light, and the red and blue lights blinking, and then there's one siren comes and then turn off. And my mom was sitting at the passenger seat, and she was so like scary and intimidated, and then she was like hitting my sister's arm and say, "Look at you, police caught us, and then what are you gonna do?" And she was yelling, and her face got red, and then she was yelling at my sister, and I was sitting at the back and watching that scene, and my sister, about 2 minutes later, she started to laughing and laughing and laughing. We didn't know what's happening. And then after she finished laughing, she said one word to my mom and said, "Mom, here is America. The officer will not take us to North Korea anymore. We will just get caught and then maybe paying the fine, that's it. So don't feel so afraid." And after my mom, she heard about that word, she completely changed her face and reaction. She was like, "Oh, that's right, we're in America." And then she started to laugh. And when I see that scene, it was very funny for me too. So we all three of us were laughing in the car. And after officer walked by us, he was watching inside of the window, and three of us were so excited after we pulled over. So officer was laughing too, and then let us pull over the window, and then he asked us like, "How are you?" and blah blah, and then he was curious why we were laughing. So I was attending high school at the time, and I learned barely basic English, so I was able to explain why we were so excited. It took about 5 minutes for me to explain, but we were saying we came from North Korea, and first time we feel freedom, so that's why we were laughing and blah blah. So I explained, and officer said okay, and then he came back with a warning ticket, and the word he said, "Welcome to America." So that was first time we realized that we finally found the freedom in America, and we don't have to fear about repatriation anymore.